Hey guy, come here for a second. Let the day unclench. Let your shoulders drop like they've been holding up the whole world for no reason. Tonight, you're stepping into a place that feels like a lullaby written in fog, reeds breathing softly, shallow water catching pale light, and a coastline that can't decide if it wants to be land or dream. Somewhere beyond that mist sits Yamatai, the shaman-queen's court, the warm hush of bronze mirrors, and marsh borders that don't need to shout to keep you out. It's gorgeous in a quiet, disciplined way, the kind of beauty that makes you speak a little softer without noticing. So here's the deal, you probably won't survive this, not because anything is chasing you, but because your busy thoughts are about to get gently dismantled. Your inner chaos is about to meet a kingdom that moves at the speed of patience, and it's going to lose. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and let me know how your day has really been, your worries, your exhaustion, or even a tiny joy that made you smile. I'm here to truly listen and offer the most sincere, heartfelt advice I can. Now turn off the lights, take a deep, slow breath, let your tiredness melt away, and gently close your eyes. Let's drift together into tonight's dreamlike lands. And tomorrow morning, if you still remember, send me a message and tell me what you dreamed. You step forward, and the world politely forgets to be modern. The air is cool against your cheeks, damp and clean, carrying that sweet, earthy scent of mud and green life. Your shoes find a narrow strip of firmer ground between puddled footprints, and you realize this path isn't really a path at all. It's a suggestion, an agreement between many careful feet over many seasons. Step here, not there, unless you feel like getting swallowed up to the ankle and pretending it was intentional. Fog makes everything feel close. It steals distance, softens edges, and turns faraway shapes into shy silhouettes. A tree 10 meters ahead looks like a rumor. A fence line is only a darker smudge in the whiteness. Sound becomes padded, as if the world has wrapped itself in cloth just for you. You hear your own breathing first, slow, warm, then the faint click of insects, then a distant wing beat you can't quite place. The marsh is beautiful, but not in a flashy way. Water reflects the pale sky in broken pieces, interrupted by reed clumps and floating leaves. Tiny blossoms cling stubbornly to the wet edges, bright against all that muted green and gray. Even your eyes relax, because nothing here is demanding an answer. There's no sign telling you what to do, no urgency trying to hook your attention. Just the soft insistence of reeds swaying like they're keeping time. As you move, the fog shifts around you with mild curiosity, parting and closing as if deciding whether you're worth revealing anything to. You catch quick glimpses, a dark line that could be stakes, a low mound that might be a watch platform, a faint glow that could be firelight, or could be the fog playing a small, lazy trick. You slow down. The marsh rewards slowness. It punishes confidence. Then you see them, figures waiting at the reed edge steady as posts. Their clothes are practical. Their hair is tied back. Their faces are calm in that particular way people are calm when they know their environment, and you don't. Nobody rushes toward you. Nobody gestures wildly. You're not treated like a miracle or a threat. You're treated like someone who has arrived and needs to be oriented before the marsh decides to teach you a rougher lesson. One of them lifts an arm. Not a wave, not a command, just a simple direction. You follow because you can already feel it. Stubborn independence would be very expensive here. You step where they step, placing your weight carefully, learning the rhythm without being told. Heel, pause, toe, breathe. The ground gives a little, then holds. Reeds brush your sleeves, cool and damp, like they're checking your intentions. You start noticing the details they notice without thinking. A half-buried stone that marks safer footing, a reed bundle tied in a particular shape, a strip of bark pinned to a post where the fog thins just a touch. It isn't decoration. It's memory, practical, communal, quietly sacred. Your breathing begins to match theirs, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because your body is relieved to have a pace that isn't frantic. A narrow wooden platform appears beneath your feet, planks worn smooth, raised just enough to keep you above the worst of the water. The wood smells sun-baked and old, like it has watched hundreds of cautious arrivals. As you walk onto it, your muscles unclench another fraction. You feel a small bloom of gratitude for something as simple as dry footing. Yamatai, it seems, understands that comfort is a kind of diplomacy. You look outward again, and the fog thins for a heartbeat, just long enough to show you the first real sign of the kingdom's shape. Far across the marsh, a dark line rises, Palisades, thick stakes standing straight like a forest that decided to learn discipline. Beyond them, higher shapes lift and fade, roofs, platforms, structures holding their breath behind layers of fence and mist. Somewhere deeper still, hidden behind screens and turns, there is a court ruled not by loudness but by meaning. You don't reach it yet. You don't even reach the city, not properly. This first step is smaller and, in its own quiet way, harder. Letting yourself be guided. Letting the marsh teach you its rules. Understanding that Yamatai begins long before any gate, out here, where fog is a living border and water remembers every careless footfall. And as you stand on the platform, listening to reeds breathe and mist drift, something inside you loosens. The day's noise fades like a lamp being turned down. Your thoughts slow. The kingdom doesn't demand your speed. You take another careful step forward, and the fog, almost kindly, makes room. You keep moving, and the wooden planks end the way a thought ends when you stop feeding it, softly, without drama. A pair of narrow boats waits in a pocket of reeds, their hulls dark with age, their edges polished by endless hands. They look too light to trust, and that's exactly the point. Heavy things sink here. Careless things sink faster. The locals guide you with the same calm that brought you this far. One of them steps into a boat as if stepping into a familiar room. The craft barely shivers. Another steadies the bow with a hand that knows the water's mood. You lower yourself in, feeling the boat accept your weight, then settle. The marsh answers with small ripples, slow rings that widen and fade, as if the place is deciding you're not worth the trouble. A paddle dips. Water darkens, then brightens as it breaks. The boat begins to glide, reed tips brushing the sides with a whispery scrape. Fog closes in, not menacing, just thorough, wrapping you until the world becomes a soft tunnel of pale air and muted sound. Your shoulders drop again. It's hard to stay tense when everything around you insists on quiet. The channel is narrow, a winding seam through wetland. Sometimes the water is glass. Sometimes it shivers with tiny disturbances you never quite see. You watch the paddle's rhythm and find your breathing matching it. Dip, pull, pause. Dip, pull, pause. The body loves patterns. The body loves being told, gently, that nothing urgent is required. A bird lifts from the reeds, long-legged, patient, pale against pale, and vanishes into whiteness with barely a sound. Another calls from somewhere to your right, the note softened by fog, as if even wildlife has agreed to keep the volume down. The locals seem to read these sounds the way you read street signs. When the call comes, the paddle angle changes. When the reeds sway a certain way, the boat turns before you even notice a turn is needed. You realize, with a mild sting to your pride, that you could not find your way back if you tried. This place doesn't reward independence, it rewards attention. It gives you markers so subtle they feel like secrets. A post rising from the water with a strip of bark tied near the top, a knot of reeds bent into a particular shape, a patch of clearer water that means the channel is deeper there. To you, it's scenery. To them, it's a map. The boats slide onward. Water sounds become your whole world. The hush of the bow, the gentle slap against the hull, the occasional plop of something dropping from a reed. Every now and then, the stalks brush your sleeve, cool and damp, a reminder that the marsh is always close enough to touch you. Then the channel widens, and the fog thins for a moment. You see movement beyond the reeds, straight lines that nature rarely bothers with. A row of vertical stakes emerges, then fades, then emerges again, Palisades, distant and disciplined, their silhouettes cutting into the whiteness. They aren't the kind of walls that shout. They are the kind that patiently say no. The sight changes your sense of scale. Until now, the marsh has felt endless, a dreamy nowhere with no center. But those stakes, those human-made lines, announce something anchored. Yamatai isn't just rumor and mist, it's built. It's organized. Someone has decided where inside ends and outside begins, and they have done it with wood, water, and a very old understanding of boundaries. The boat moves, and the Palisades slip out of view again. Fog returns like a curtain being gently drawn. You're left with the afterimage of straight stakes in your mind, a reminder that there are rules here, even when they're whispered. A small current nudges the hull sideways. It's subtle, but enough to wake your instincts. Your hands tighten on the boat's edge. Water looks closer, colder, suddenly very interested in your ankles. The local at the stern adjusts without urgency. One clean stroke, then another, and the boat steadies. No panic. No fuss. Just competence. The marsh offers you the lesson and lets you keep your dignity. As the channel bends, you catch another glimpse of built shapes. This time not just stakes, but a faint rise behind them, like rooftops or watched platforms peeking through fog. Smoke threads upward in a thin line, then disappears. The smell reaches you a heartbeat later, wood fire, faintly sweet, mingled with damp earth. The kingdom is close enough now that your senses recognize it without needing a clear view. The boat's slow near a thicker reed wall where the water becomes calmer, almost still. A narrow landing appears, worn planks, half floating, half anchored. You feel the craft nudge in, gentle as a thought settling into place. The locals step out first, then indicate where your foot should go, where the board is strongest, where the mud waits to swallow the impatient. You stand, legs a little unsure after sitting low and moving so smoothly. Fog beads on your hair and lashes. The reed boats rest behind you like dark commas in a pale sentence. Ahead, the path continues, still quiet, still controlled, and somewhere beyond the next bend, those Palisades wait with their patient refusal. You take a slow breath, tasting smoke and water, and you step forward again, letting the marsh carry you right up to the edge of the kingdom. The landing boards fade behind you as the ground begins to firm. Not fully. Nothing here is ever fully, but enough that your steps stop sounding like careful apologies. The reeds thin. The fog loosens in patches, as if it's bored of clinging to you. And the first thing you notice is how the kingdom feeds itself. You come to a low embankment where water is guided rather than merely endured. Narrow channels run beside the path, their edges pressed smooth by years of bare feet and patient tools. The locals keep you moving at a steady pace, and you learn to read the land the way you learn to read the boat channel. Follow the lines that look intentional, trust the places where many feet have agreed to step, and don't improvise unless you want a wet, humiliating surprise. Ahead, the marsh opens into fields, flooded rectangles that catch the sky like scattered mirrors. Rice plants rise from the water in tidy rows, a disciplined green that still looks gentle. When the wind moves across them, it doesn't rustle like leaves, it shivers like a crowd quietly turning its head. The air smells warmer here, heavy with wet soil and growing life, and the fog becomes a thin veil rather than a wall. You walk the patty edges on narrow ridges of packed earth. They're just wide enough for one person to pass without stepping into the water, which feels like a deliberate design choice. It keeps the pace slow, it keeps people close, and it stops anyone from strutting their way into trouble. Every few steps, you see footprints pressed into the mud, old ones, new ones, stacked like pages in a book nobody bothers to title. The channel splits at a small wooden gate. A hand lifts it, another lowers it, and water obeys with a quiet sigh. Here, water is not scenery, it's the calendar. Too much and the seedlings drown. Too little and the stalks harden and sulk. So the community treats the flow like a shared duty, the way you might treat light in a room where someone is trying to sleep. Beyond the patties stand raised structures on sturdy posts, their floors lifted well above damp ground. Granaries. They look like small houses that have learned to hover. The posts are wrapped near the top with smooth bands, simple barriers to keep rodents from climbing. Even storage has defenses. It isn't paranoia, it's arithmetic. A single hungry season can erase a year of labor, and Yamatai doesn't waste effort pretending the world is kind. You move closer and notice the textures. Thatch layered thickly, walls woven tight, doors that can be sealed against moisture. Under the eaves, bundles of straw hang like quiet trophies. There's no ornament for ornament's sake, but the craft is tidy and confident. It says, we know what matters, and we do it well. The path leads you to a workspace where the harvest is being prepared. Not all of it. Some fields are still green, but enough to show the rhythm. Stalks are gathered into orderly piles. Wooden frames hold sheaves up off the ground to dry, like beds made for plants. People move through the space with the calm economy you've been seeing since the boats. No wasted steps, no dramatic gestures, just bodies doing what bodies do when they've done it for generations. You watch grains being loosened from stalks with steady, repetitive motion. The sound is gentle, soft tapping, a dry whisper, an occasional thud as a bundle is set down. It's work, but it isn't frantic. The pace is built for endurance, not for impressing anyone. You can almost feel your own nervous system taking notes, quietly filing away the idea that slow can be strong. Smoke drifts from a low fire, used for warmth and to keep dampness from settling too deep. The smell blends with straw and mud until it becomes the signature of the place. You think of the reed boats behind you, sliding along the channel as if the marsh itself agreed to carry you. This is the other side of that agreement. The land is coaxed, not conquered. Water is guided. Grain is saved. Time is respected. The locals lead you along the outer edge of the fields where the ground rises slightly and the fog gathers again. From here, you see how the paddies sit like a patchwork between marsh and settlement, an in-between zone that matches Yamatai's whole personality. Nothing is simply open or closed. Everything is layered: fog, field, fence somewhere beyond, then fence again. Their guidance becomes a wordless lesson in patience. They don't rush you toward the Palisades. They let you absorb the logic first. If you can't understand the rice, you can't understand the court. The shaman-queen's authority may shimmer in bronze mirrors and sacred restraint, but it rests on muddy ankles, stored grain, and people who show up even when the weather is unromantic. By the time you pass the granaries again, the fog has thinned enough for you to glimpse, beyond the fields, the darker verticals of the outer palisade. It stands there, patient as ever, while the paddies glitter below it like a deliberate offering. You take one more slow step along the ridge, careful not to slip, and you understand the quiet bargain Yamatai offers. Give this season your attention, and it will give you your life back, one bowl of rice at a time. You leave the paddy ridges with mud still remembering your footprints, and the land rises so subtly you only notice when your ankles stop negotiating with every step. The air changes, too, less wet soil sweetness, more smoke and warm plant fiber, plus a faint tang of dye or fermentation or the marsh's way of reminding you it's never fully behind you. Work yards appear along the drier edge of the settlement. Nothing is grand, nothing tries to impress you, and that's how you know it's real. Spaces are arranged with the quiet logic of people who want to finish what matters before night. Sheltered corners for delicate hands, open ground for messy tasks, stacks of material placed where arms can reach without wasted motion. Yamatai's power isn't only hidden behind palisades, it's stitched into routine. You're guided down a narrow lane bordered by bundles of reeds and coils of fiber. A weaver sits near a frame loom, posture relaxed, hands moving with a calm certainty that makes your own restlessness feel a little loud. Threads stretch taut like pale water lines. The shuttle slides through. The cloth grows, slowly, relentlessly, one soft increment at a time. No one looks up to acknowledge you. The work itself is the greeting, and you understand your role, witness, not disturbance. Dyed yarn hangs nearby in muted curtains, indigo dark, earthy reds, smoky browns, colors that look borrowed from dusk and soil. When the wind stirs, the strands sway, and you think of reeds breathing over the marsh channels. Same motion, different meaning. The kingdom takes what the landscape offers and translates it into warmth you can wrap around a shoulder. A basket of raw fiber sits open, being combed and twisted into thread. You touch it lightly, feeling its roughness, imagining the hours required to turn this into cloth that won't itch. Your modern brain starts to whisper about faster and better, then remembers nobody asked it to perform. Here, steadiness is the whole point. The lane bends and the scent shifts. Hot clay, ash, a sharp mineral note that makes your tongue feel like it's learning a new word. Pottery yards sit farther from dwellings, as if everyone agreed fire deserves respectful distance. Clay rests under damp cloths. Half-formed vessels line shelves, their surfaces marked with fingerprints and smoothing strokes. You watch a pot take shape under slow pressure, palms coaxing walls upward, thumbs guiding the rim, the whole thing becoming useful without ever needing hurry. A kiln squats nearby, dark and solid, its mouth sealed with packed earth. Warmth radiates in a steady pulse. Smoke threads upward and dissolves into the thinning fog. People move around the kiln with the same unhurried competence you saw at the patties. Fire treated like water, guided, timed, respected. It's the opposite of panic. It's planning you can feel. Finished pots cool on a bench, burnished until they catch light softly, not shiny, just alive. The shapes are practical: storage jars, bowls, cooking vessels, yet each holds tiny variations that prove hands made them. You can almost picture their future: grain poured, soup stirred, offerings placed, fingers warmed around ceramic when the marsh chill creeps back in. Then comes lacquer, and the mood tightens in a subtle way, as if the air itself learns to tread carefully. Under a shaded awning, wooden objects rest on racks: trays, combs, tool handles, boxes, each coated in a deep sheen that swallows light. A worker applies another layer with a brush so fine it looks like a whisper. The stroke is slow, even, hypnotic, like smoothing the surface of a mind that won't stop talking. You lean closer, because curiosity is your most consistent habit, and immediately realize lacquer is not a thing you touch casually. It looks dry. It isn't. It looks harmless. It isn't. A local hand lifts, not scolding, just redirecting. You freeze mid-lean like someone who nearly sat on wet paint. You straighten, cheeks warming with quiet embarrassment. The kingdom accepts your interest. It does not accept your clumsiness. They guide you to a basin where water sits cool and clear. You rinse your fingertips anyway, just in case enthusiasm brushed something it shouldn't. The water carries away nothing visible, but the gesture matters. Clean hands, clean intention. You watch how lacquer turns simple wood into something that endures damp seasons and constant handling. Layer after layer, drying after drying, patience stacked on patience. It reminds you of reed boats and narrow boards. Yamatai doesn't leap, it accumulates. The kingdom is built the way this sheen is built, slowly, carefully, trusting time to do its part if you do yours. As you move on, the locals keep close, guiding you with small motions. Turn here, slow down, don't step there where fresh clay waits to claim your footwear forever. You learn the etiquette of making. Don't interrupt the rhythm. Don't waste material. Don't rush what needs to set. By the lane's end, the fog thins enough for the outer palisade to show itself again beyond roofs and racks. A dark vertical line that quietly insists on boundaries. What guards Yamatai is not only wood and water. It's this: hands that weave warmth, shape fire, and seal wood against wetness. Quiet industry holding the kingdom together while the deeper court holds the meaning. You exhale slowly, letting the scent of smoke and lacquer settle into you like a small charm, and you follow the lane onward. The workyards fall behind you the way a warm room falls behind you when you step into a corridor. Same building, different hush. The lane narrows. Roof lines draw closer, then give way to open space where the ground looks deliberately maintained. Packed earth, swept clean, no stray bundles, no casual clutter. Even the air feels tidier, as if it's been trained to behave. Ahead, the Palisades no longer appear as distant rumors. They stand close now, thick wooden stakes sunk deep, sharpened tops angled slightly outward, the whole wall darkened by weather and smoke. You can smell the wood, resin, age, damp, and something faintly bitter like old ash. A fence like this isn't just built, it's lived with. There isn't a single gate so much as a controlled narrowing of choices. The locals bring you to a point where two fences overlap, creating a passage that bends so you can't see straight through. It forces you to slow. It forces your eyes to adjust. It also means anyone trying to rush in would have to commit to turns without knowing what waits around them. You can almost feel the design thinking behind it. Practical, calm, quietly suspicious of suddenness. People here move differently. Outside the palisade, you saw shoulders loose and hands busy. Here, posture straightens. Steps shorten. Movements become economical, as if the body has learned that inside spaces are full of invisible things, authority, ritual, consequences. Nobody says this aloud. They don't need to. The way they hold themselves is the rulebook. You follow them into the passage between fences. The walls block the wind. The sound changes. Your footsteps become more audible, the soft scuff of sandals against packed earth. The fog is thinner inside, but it doesn't disappear. It lingers as a gentle curtain, keeping everything muted and pale. You realize the marsh and the palisade cooperate. Water slows outsiders. Wood filters whoever remains. At a widening of the passage, you see watch platforms. Simple raised structures with ladders, just high enough for someone to scan the outer fields and read channels. Nothing ornate. Nothing ceremonial. Still, they feel like an extension of the court's discipline. Eyes always present, never dramatic about it. A local guide places a hand lightly near your elbow, not gripping, not pulling, just the slightest physical suggestion that you should keep your pace measured. You obey, and it's almost funny how quickly your body learns to comply. You don't want to be the one loud thing in a place built for quiet. Beyond the first layer of palisade, you reach another, set farther in. The space between them holds small structures, store sheds, tool racks, perhaps places for guards to rest. The arrangement feels like a throat. Outside air enters, is filtered, becomes softer. If Yamatai were a living creature, these fences would be its ribs. Then comes the first moment you feel the court's presence directly, not by seeing it, but by noticing what is absent. The casual smell of open cooking fires fades. The clatter of pottery yards is gone. Even the sound of birds seems more distant. In its place is a kind of deliberate quiet, like the pause before a ritual begins. You're led along a path lined with posts. Some posts hold simple markings, twine knots, strips of cloth, small carved notches. These aren't decorations meant for you. They are instructions for people who already know how to read them. Boundaries, permissions, reminders of what you carry in your mind and on your skin. You catch yourself thinking of the reed knots out in the marsh, and you realize Yamatai uses the same language everywhere. Subtle signs, shared understanding, no need to explain to outsiders. The path bends again, and the ground rises slightly. You can't see the inner court, not properly, but you feel it. The air seems cooler. Your skin prickles with the sense that you are approaching a space where the wrong step is not merely muddy but meaningful. You pass a low fence within the larger fence. Another layer, another narrowing. The locals pause before it, and you pause with them. They look at you, not searching, not hostile, just assessing whether you can match the tempo here. Their gaze feels like a quiet question. Can you carry yourself with restraint? Can you be present without grabbing at what you see? You soften your posture. You slow your breathing. You let your eyes take in the details without pouncing on them. In return, the passage continues. Inside this second boundary, small courtyards open like pockets of calm. The ground is swept. Water basins sit near entrances. A few stones are arranged in ways that feel intentional, perhaps to mark direction, perhaps to anchor something unseen. You see a line of tall grasses planted as a screen, their heads swaying gently, hiding whatever lies beyond. The kingdom doesn't like straight sidelines. It prefers layers. And then, through a gap between screens, you glimpse bronze. Not a mirror yet, not clearly. Just a flash of warm metal catching what little sun the fog allows. The glimpse is brief, but it lands in your mind with weight. It's like seeing the edge of a crown without seeing the head that wears it. The locals don't react to your interest. They simply keep walking, because urgency is not a language the court speaks. You follow, now feeling the pull of the inner world, fences, screens, and quiet rules, drawing you inward like a slow current. By the time you reach the next turn, you understand the Palisades are more than defense. They're a lesson. The closer you get to meaning, the more carefully you must move. You round another screen of grasses and the world narrows again, not in distance, but in consequence. The gap that offered that brief bronze flash closes behind you, and a small courtyard opens ahead, swept earth, a low awning, and basins that catch the pale light like still ponds. It is a threshold space, built to rinse the outside off you before you are allowed to carry your breathing any farther in. The attendants are already there. Clothes are clean. Hair is controlled. Hands are careful. Nobody hurries, and yet nothing is wasted. Their calm isn't leisure, it's practice, repeated until it looks effortless. One attendant indicates the first basin with a small tilt of the wrist. No words, no performance. Just begin. You kneel because kneeling feels like the correct volume for this place. The water is cold enough to sharpen you. You dip your hands and feel the day's dust lift away, even the dust you didn't know you carried. Mud from the paddy ridges loosens from your nails. The marsh smell fades and something cleaner takes its place. Water, wood, smoke held at a respectful distance. A cloth is offered. You dry your hands slowly, noticing how even this has etiquette. No flinging droplets, no frantic scrubbing, no messy impatience. Cleanliness here isn't private. It's communal, a small promise that you won't bring disorder into the court and pretend you didn't notice. 2 fingers draw a soft arc downward, and you understand. Rinse again, up to the wrists. You obey, and the cold climbs your skin like a quiet correction. Behind the awning a brazier breeze, just embers, just warmth, and a thin thread of smoke rises with an earthy sweetness, like dried leaves warmed after rain. It doesn't shout. It simply settles around you. Water drips from your fingers in slow, polite taps. Somewhere beyond the screens, you hear a distant bird call, softened by fog, and the faint creak of wood as someone shifts their weight. Even sound is filtered here, as if the Palisades trained it. You keep your hands close, letting the quiet do its work. You glance toward the inner path and stop yourself at once. Looking ahead too hungrily feels rude, like peering through someone's doorway before you're invited in. The attendants notice anyway, and one shifts slightly to block your line of sight without making it obvious. The message is gentle and absolute, not yet. You are guided to sit on a low plank. A bowl appears, then a ladle. This water is warm, heated just enough to relax rather than startle. Fine grains, salt, ash, something simple and effective, are rubbed gently across your palms. The texture is gritty, then it dissolves. When you rinse again, your skin feels awake and clean. Your face is next. A damp cloth touches your brow, your cheeks, your jawline, slow strokes that quiet the last of your travel tension. You notice you have been clenching since the reed boats, as if the marsh might demand an argument. It never did. You let your jaw loosen now, and your shoulders follow. Then your hair. A comb is lifted, wooden, polished, lacquered so deeply it swallows light. You remember how you almost leaned into wet lacquer earlier and feel a small, private relief that you are at least improving. The comb passes through in long, unhurried pulls, gathering stray strands into order. It isn't vanity. It's alignment. A pinch of aromatic material falls onto the embers. The smoke thickens briefly, then turns silky, wrapping your shoulders and drifting past your face. You breathe it in and feel your thoughts soften at the edges. The scent slows you down the way still water slows a boat. Your clothing is adjusted with the same practical care you saw at the granaries. A damp smear is brushed away. A loose tie is tightened. A pale strip of clean fabric is wrapped at your wrist, simple as a reminder, keep your movements contained. Then, because Yamatai loves layers, you are guided to a second basin area within the first. Here the stepping stones form a pattern. You understand without being told that only certain stones are acceptable. You place your feet where the attendant places theirs, slow and exact. The stones are cool through your soles, and the pattern funnels you forward, narrowing your choices until your body is walking in the shape the court prefers. You nearly misstep. Your toe drifts toward a stone that looks identical. An attendant's hand lifts, not touching you, just stopping you with air. You pause, foot hovering, heart giving a brief, stupid thump. Then you place your foot where they indicate, and the moment dissolves. No scolding, no shame. The correction is enough. The court doesn't want you broken, it wants you calibrated. A final rinse. A final drying. A final waft of smoke, slower now, as if sealing the work. Your hands feel lighter. Your skin feels clean. And your mind, annoyingly, feels quieter too, as if the marsh and the attendants have teamed up to dismantle your frantic habits one gentle step at a time. The attendants step aside. The path ahead opens between screens and posts, leading deeper into the inner world where bronze glints are no longer accidents. You rise carefully, as if standing is part of the ritual too, and you follow the offered direction with the simplest kind of obedience, the kind that lets you pass without disturbing the air. You keep following the offered path, and it feels like walking deeper into the quiet half of your own body. Screens of grass and woven panels steer you through mild turns. Each corner makes the outside world less relevant. The ground stays swept. The air stays cool. And every now and then, that faint resin scent returns, just enough to remind you that in Yamatai, shine is never accidental. The bronze appears properly now, not as a distant wink through fog, but as something waiting for you to behave. A low building sits slightly apart, its entrance half veiled by a hanging screen. You don't stride in, because the place has already trained that out of you. An attendant shifts the screen just enough, and you step into dim mist that smells like dry wood, old smoke, and metal kept safe from damp. Your eyes adjust. Shelves, racks, wrapped bundles. And on a raised platform, round discs laid in careful order. Bronze mirrors. Not one, but several, their faces turned downward, protected as if even light needs permission. You kneel because your body has learned the court's preferred punctuation. A folded cloth is placed near your hands. Another cloth lies under the nearest mirror. Everything has a buffer. Everything has a boundary. You remember the lacquer you nearly leaned into earlier, and feel quietly pleased that your mistakes are becoming smaller. One mirror is lifted with both hands by someone who moves as if the air is fragile. The weight shows immediately, not heavy like a stone, but heavy with intention. The disc is set in front of you on the cloth, and you feel that little inward tightening that happens when beauty comes with rules. The back of the mirror is where you start. Raised patterns catch what little light slips through the screen. Concentric rings, crisp lines, geometric marks, hints of symbols that don't bother explaining themselves. A central knob rises like an anchor point, meant for a cord, meant for carrying, meant for control. Even the art has a grip. You let your eyes trace the ridges slowly, careful not to touch. You can almost picture the making, metal melted, poured, cooled, polished. Someone turned dull bronze into a surface that can hold the world. When the mirror is finally turned, the front catches you off guard. It isn't bright, eager shine like modern glass. It's warmer, softer, moonlight caught in metal. The surface holds faint waves and tiny imperfections that make it feel alive rather than flawless. In the dim room it reflects shadows first, the screen's weave, the edge of your sleeve, the curve of a careful hand hovering above. Then a thin beam of sun finds its way through fog and through a gap in the screen, and the bronze responds instantly. Light blooms across it, an amber-white flare that shifts as the mirror tilts a fraction. A pale spot appears on the wall, then slides, slow and deliberate, like a wandering ember. You realize the mirror doesn't only show. It sends. It points. It can direct attention without any raised voice. Of course, your modern instincts want your own face in it. You lean slightly, and the mirror gives you what it gives everyone, an answer that doesn't care what you hoped for. Your reflection appears, but it's not flattering and it's not cruel. The bronze softens edges, warms tones, blurs detail. You look like a person rendered in fog, quieter, slower, almost gentled into being. Your eyes seem different, less armed, less ready to argue with the world. As the beam shifts, your face is briefly cut by light and shadow. A stripe of brightness crosses your cheek and disappears. It's small, almost silly, and yet it lands like a warning. You are not the center here. You are only something passing through the light. The attendant adjusts the mirror minutely, and your reflection slips away. The surface catches the room instead, the shelves, the cloth bundles, the dim outline of another mirror resting face down like a sleeping eye. The lesson is blunt in the gentlest possible way. What you see depends on how you hold yourself. Angle matters. Discipline matters. Intention matters. You notice fine scratches, old ones, not carelessness, but evidence of travel and use. These mirrors have been shown, bestowed, counted. They are tokens of the shaman-queen's reach, the kind of gift that binds loyalty and marks status without a spoken oath. In a kingdom where fog hides borders, a mirror that holds and throws light can feel like proof that the center exists. Nearby sits a small stone dish of polishing powder, faintly mineral, a touch of ash. Cloths are folded with obsessive neatness. Everything here suggests maintenance, shine preserved against humidity, against fingerprints, against time. The marsh wants to dull everything. The court refuses. You breathe slow, letting the last sunbeam rest on bronze for one more heartbeat. Somewhere beyond the screen, soft footsteps pass, measured and calm, reminding you this room is only one layer. The mirrors are not the queen, but they are part of her language, authority you can carry on a cord, hang on a wall, and feel in your chest. When the mirror is turned face down again, the light vanishes as if someone extinguished it with politeness. The cloth is wrapped. The disc returns to its place. You rise carefully, feeling the strange after-effect of being reflected by something that doesn't flatter, only reveals. You step back through the hanging screen into foggy daylight, and the world feels different now, as if evenness could be shaped, just as bronze can be shaped, into a quiet, controlled sun. You step out of the mirror room and the daylight feels edited, fog softened, politely blurred, as if the court decided sharp edges are unnecessary. The attendants guide you along another swept path past screens that sway like slow breath. You still carry the afterimage of bronze, warm lights sliding, your own face briefly turned into something calmer and less convinced it's in charge. The air grows sweeter as you walk. Not pretty sweet, more like dried leaves warming and sap waking, with a faint bitterness that keeps it grounded. You recognize the hint of it at the cleansing brazier. Here it's stronger, braided with resin and smoke. Incense that doesn't try to charm you. It simply changes the room inside your skull. You arrive at a courtyard that announces itself through behavior. People are already there, moving with shared restraint that makes the space feel larger than it is. The ground is packed and swept, bordered by low fencing and woven panels. Beyond those panels, you sense deeper rooms, deeper screens, deeper spaces that are quietly off-limits to you. Still, you're allowed this edge where witnessing is permitted, as long as you don't mistake permission for belonging. The attendants place you beside a post wrapped with pale fiber. The placement is exact. You're not blocked from seeing, you're prevented from forgetting your place. It's oddly reassuring, like being tucked into the safe corner of a ritual you don't speak. Offerings sit on low tables in an order that calms anxious minds. Bowls of grain, small bundles of dried seafood, fruit dulled by fog, cups of clear liquid catching thin light. A few lacquered trays gleam softly, dry, thankfully, and you keep your hands folded, remembering how close you came to becoming a walking caution sign back in the craft yards. The first drumbeat arrives as pressure before it becomes sound. It nudges your ribs from the inside. The beat is slow, spaced out, almost lazy, until you realize it isn't lazy at all. It's patient. It tells the body to stop sprinting. Another beat answers. Then another, slightly different in tone. The rhythms don't compete. They interlock like woven threads. Your breathing starts to match them without your permission, which is mildly insulting to your sense of control, but also deeply effective. Dip, pull, pause. like the paddles in the reed boats. Yamatai repeats lessons until your nerves finally give up and learn. Incense smoke thickens, curling upward in pale ropes that dissolve into the fog-dimmed sky, then drift back down as if the air is heavier here. It clings to hair and cloth. It settles on the tongue. The space between you and the offering table feels weighted, like distance has gained substance. Figures move in the courtyard center, attendants, ritual specialists, people whose roles are written into their posture. They carry small objects wrapped in cloth, lift them, set them down, touch bowls, adjust trays. Each motion is measured, and the steadiness makes the whole scene feel inevitable, like water finding the lowest path. A bronze mirror appears, smaller than the ones you saw stored away, but unmistakable in its warm, quiet glow. It is carried level, face down, as if even reflection needs containment. When it's placed on a stand, attention tightens across the courtyard. Not fear, focus. Everyone's gaze gathers, the way water gathers toward a channel. The drums shift. The spacing shortens, then widens again. A steady pulse forms, and your thoughts begin to line up behind it, one after another, suddenly willing to wait their turn. Smoke passes in front of your eyes and the world looks painted, soft layers, muted edges, moving patterns in the woven screens. You understand why this kingdom loves mirrors. When you don't control the angle, reflection becomes a kind of spell. A ritual fire is fed with a small pinch of resin. The scent deepens. Your chest feels warm on the inhale and cool on the exhale, as if the air is being tuned. Near the center, hands lift and lower in a repeated sequence. Not theatrical, more like the careful opening and closing of water gates in the rice fields. Timing again. The belief that small motions, done correctly, keep a whole community from slipping into disorder. You watch from the margin and realize the ceremony is also a message. It tells the people, the center is stable. The court is aligned. The spirits, or the idea of spirits, are being attended to, and therefore the seasons might behave. In a place built on wet ground and fog, stability is not a luxury. It's survival dressed in meaning. The drums build slightly, then settle. The rhythm becomes so steady that your eyelids feel heavier, not with boredom but with acceptance. The smoke softens your thoughts the way damp air softens a flame's crackle. Even your worries feel farther away, as if the marsh has finally convinced you to stop shouting across distances. A final offering is placed. The bronze mirror is turned just a fraction, not enough for you to see your face, but enough to catch a pale streak of sky and throw it onto the ground like a thin blade of light. It lasts only a heartbeat. Brief, controlled, almost stingy with brightness. And yet it lands as a promise made without words. Slowly, the courtyard loosens. People shift back into ordinary posture. The drums quiet, leaving your chest with a ghost pulse that lingers like a lullaby your body refuses to forget. The attendants nearest you make the smallest motion, time to move on. You step back from the margin, careful not to disturb the swept earth, and you carry the thickened air with you, as if incense has coated your thoughts in a protective sheen. You leave the incense-thick courtyard and the air immediately feels thinner, like you've stepped out of a slow song and into its quiet aftermath. Your body still carries that drum pulse in the ribs, faint, stubborn, while your mind tries, out of habit, to label what you just witnessed. The attendants don't reward labeling. They guide you onward, and the paths begin to angle outward, away from the densest layers of fencing, towards spaces where the fog has more authority. The ground underfoot changes again. Less swept earth, more packed soil mixed with fine gravel and reed fragments. The path isn't rough, but it's honest about where you are, closer to the marsh, closer to the place where Yamatai stops being a court and becomes a boundary. A few locals join you, people who look like they belong to the edge. Their clothing is practical. Their eyes move differently, not staring, not flinching, just scanning in small, steady arcs. They carry simple tools, a pole, a bundled net, a coil of cord. Nothing that screams security. Everything that quietly says, "We understand this land better than you ever will." You walk with them in the same single-file rhythm you learned on the paddy ridges. It's almost funny how Yamatai keeps teaching you the same lesson through different scenery. Narrow paths create calm. Calm creates safety. Safety creates the illusion of control. Your modern brain wants a map. Yamatai offers reeds. Fog thickens as you approach the outer edge. It isn't the random fog of weather anymore. It feels curated. Like someone has encouraged it, fed it, learned how to keep it hanging in the right places at the right times. The locals don't comment. They don't have to. You can smell it, smoke, faint and constant, not from a kitchen but from low, hidden fires that burn damp wood to create slow, pale haze. The marsh breathes fog. The people teach it where to linger. A post rises from the ground ahead, barely taller than your waist. It looks ordinary until you notice the markings. A strip of bark tied in a particular direction, a small notch cut into the wood, a reed bundle bent and secured at the base. It's the same language you saw out on the water channels, the same quiet signage, now used for something sharper than navigation. The locals pause. One points, not with a finger, but with the tip of a pole, toward a patch of reeds that looks identical to every other patch. You stare, and of course you see nothing special. Then your eyes adjust and you catch it. The reeds there lean differently, as if wind touches them from a direction the rest of the marsh doesn't share. A narrow gap lies hidden inside, a slit of water that leads outward, or inward, depending on who knows about it. You're led along the edge rather than through it. That's the point. The border isn't a line you cross, it's a zone you respect. Sound becomes part of the map. You hear water in different moods, the dull, thick sound of shallow mud, the brighter, cleaner note of a deeper channel, the soft ticking of insects that fades when the ground becomes too wet. A bird calls once from the left. One of the locals slows instantly. Not because the call is alarming, but because it's information. Another bird answers farther away, and the locals' shoulders ease again. To you it's background. To them it's a living bulletin board. You pass a place where the reeds are cut shorter, not cleared, just disciplined. The cut ends look pale, fresh. This isn't farming, it's visibility management. Too dense and someone can hide. Too open and the land loses its natural confusion. Yamatai chooses the middle, enough concealment to swallow strangers, enough order to guide its own people without hesitation. As you move, the fog shifts, thickening and thinning like a slow tide. Your instinct wants to push ahead when it thins, to use the chance. The locals do the opposite. When visibility improves, they slow down, because that's when outsiders might also see a little too far, get curious, wander in. The marsh's brief generosity is treated as risk. You're shown small, almost comically simple tricks that become lethal in the wrong hands. A tuft of grass tied at a certain height means the next step is firm. Another tuft, tied lower, means the ground will give way. A stone placed slightly off-center indicates a submerged route you can balance on. These are tiny decisions that keep your feet dry and your pride intact. And then, because you are still you, curious, slightly too confident, carried along by the illusion that you're learning fast, you drift half a step off the path. It happens quietly. Your foot finds what looks like solid ground and immediately sinks with a slow, greedy suction. Mud climbs your shoe. Your knee bends. Your balance wobbles. For a heartbeat, you imagine yourself going down in a spectacular, humiliating sprawl, becoming an anecdote told with polite smiles in a court that never laughs out loud. A pole slides under your forearm. Not yanked, supported. A local shifts their weight, gives you leverage. Another gestures, don't fight it. Lift slowly, roll your foot out. You follow the instruction, and the mud releases you with a reluctant slurp, like it's disappointed you didn't commit to the full sinking experience. Your shoe comes free, heavier, coated in dark wetness. You stand there, breathing a little faster, trying not to look offended by nature. The locals don't react with judgment. They react with quiet satisfaction, like, good, now you understand. They lead you to a shallow rinse pool where water is clearer. You swish your shoe gently, watching mud cloud and drift away. It reminds you of the cleansing basins near the inner court. Same act, different reason. There, cleanliness was ritual alignment. Here, it's survival and stealth. Mud left on footwear can mark your path. Yamatai doesn't like leaving evidence. You continue the circuit, and gradually you sense what the border truly is. Not a wall, not a gate, not a single dramatic obstacle. It's a layered atmosphere. Fog that blurs intent. Reeds that hide direction. Channels that turn in on themselves. Signs only locals can read. Even the mirrors, in their way, belong here, because reflection can mislead as easily as it can reveal. When you glance back, the inner Palisades are gone behind mist and screens. When you look outward, there's no clear, outside either, just endless wetland fading into pale distance. The border doesn't confront you. It erases your certainty. By the time the locals guide you back toward firmer ground, your steps have changed. You walk slower, softer, more deliberate. You've stopped trying to beat the fog. You've started cooperating with it. Yamatai's edge has done its job. It has taught you that survival here is not about strength. It's about moving like you belong, even when you don't. You return from the marsh edge circuit with a shoe that's still a little heavier than it should be, even after rinsing, because mud has a way of clinging to pride, not just leather. The locals guide you back toward the settlement with the same calm competence, as if rescuing visitors from embarrassing sinks is simply part of the day's maintenance. Like checking water gates or reading reed markers before the fog gets ambitious again. The air warms as you leave the deepest mist. Smoke grows friendlier. Cooking smoke now, not border smoke. The ground firms underfoot, and without you noticing the exact moment it happens, the kingdom begins to sound like people again. Soft footsteps, low movement, the gentle clack of wood on wood, the rustle of bundles being shifted. Nothing loud. Just life doing its steady thing. You're led toward a wider open area where paths converge. The space feels like a breath the settlement takes on purpose, open enough for many bodies, arranged enough to keep them from colliding. And then you smell it, salt. Sharp, clean, almost metallic in the air. It sits alongside the sweetness of dried fish and the earthy comfort of grain, creating a scent that says, very plainly, exchange is happening. Market day isn't announced with banners or shouting. Yamatai doesn't do that kind of enthusiasm. It reveals itself through density. More baskets, more bundles, more careful faces appearing from lanes and courtyards, each person moving with an unhurried precision that somehow prevents chaos. You realize the kingdom isn't quiet because it's empty. It's quiet because it's controlled. Stalls are simple, mats on packed earth, low tables, woven screens propped as wind breaks. Goods are arranged in calm, intentional spreads, piles of rice measured into neat mounds, jars sealed with fiber and clay, dried seaweed folded like dark paper, fish laid in rows that look almost ceremonial. There are baskets of roots and herbs, bundles of reeds, rolls of cloth dyed in those dust-colored tones you saw hanging near the weavers. A few lacquered pieces gleam with that deep, swallowed light shine, and you keep your hands politely close to your body, remembering how lacquer doesn't forgive optimism. Along one edge of the market, salt sits in cloth sacks and shallow bowls, white, granular, precious. You watch people handle it with the gentle respect usually reserved for offerings. Salt doesn't just flavor, it preserves. In a damp kingdom that's always negotiating with water, preservation is power. Closer to the center, you see iron, dark, dull, serious. Not in great heaps, but in carefully displayed items. Knife blades, small hooks, nails, simple tools that make work lighter and hunting cleaner and building more reliable. Iron changes everything without ever needing to brag about it. The way people lean in to inspect a blade tells you this isn't casual shopping. It's a quiet investment in survival. Beads appear like small captured stars, glassy spheres, polished stone, shell discs drilled and strung. Their colors are muted in fog light, greens, smoky blues, soft whites. But they still catch your attention because your brain is wired to notice tiny bright things and assign them far too much meaning. Here, the meaning is straightforward: beads travel. Beads remember routes. Beads are proof that Yamatai is not an isolated dream, even if it hides behind reed and haze. You watch exchange happen without the frantic bargaining you'd expect in a louder world. People place goods down, pause, assess, adjust. The smallest tilt of a hand can change the deal. A bundle is tightened. A handful of grain is added. A bead strand is shifted to reveal its better side. Diplomacy through objects, not speeches, because speeches are messy and the court prefers clean lines. New arrivals drift in from the direction of the water landing, coastal traders, or at least people who smell like coast, brine, seaweed, sun-dried rope. Their clothing carries a slightly different cut, their bundles are tied with unfamiliar knots, and their eyes scan the market the way border watchers scan reeds, quietly, constantly, reading the atmosphere before committing. No one welcomes them with theatrical hospitality. Instead, Yamatai welcomes them with procedure. They're guided to a place where goods can be set down, inspected, and redistributed without disrupting the market's slow rhythm. You notice the careful layering of access. Outsiders don't simply wander wherever they like. They are gently contained, the way fog contains sight, the way Palisades contain movement. It's not hostility. It's management. You find yourself standing near a spread of pottery, bowls, jars, vessels with burnished surfaces that hold light like warm skin. A local shows you, with a small motion, how one jar's rim is slightly thicker, better for sealing, how another's base is flatter, better for stable storage on damp floors. Practical beauty. Every object is an answer to a specific problem. Nearby, a small cloth bundle is unwrapped to reveal a bronze item. Not a mirror this time, but a fitting, a decorative piece, maybe a mount for something that matters. The bronze glows softly even when it isn't trying. Your mind flicks back to the mirror room, the way light bloomed and then vanished when the face turned downward, the way reflection felt like a warning dressed as a gift. Here, bronze isn't displayed for spectacle. It's handled like something that has consequences. You realize the market is also a court in miniature. Not the shaman-queen's inner court, no incense-heavy trance here, but a social court where status is negotiated by what you bring, what you accept, and how calmly you do both. A person with a clean iron blade gains a kind of gravity. A person with salt gains leverage. A person with beads gains connection to distant hands. Even a simple sack of rice carries the weight of paddies, water gates, granaries, an entire season folded into grain. You drift along the edges, guided like you've been guided all day, never pushed, never abandoned, while the locals let you see how the kingdom breathes outward. You notice how goods move in small streams, not floods, a jar exchanged for salt, salt exchanged for fish, fish exchanged for fiber, fiber exchanged for cloth. Each trade is a step that keeps Yamatai steady against weather, hunger, and the marsh's constant attempt to reclaim everything. For a moment, fog thickens at the market's edge, and the world softens again. People don't panic. They keep trading. They keep moving. They keep their hands close to their bodies, their footsteps careful, their voices, if there are any, low enough that you don't catch them. Yamatai doesn't stop functioning when visibility drops. It was built inside the fog. It learned to make the fog work for it. And as you stand there, half-salted air on your lips, you understand something gentle and sharp at once. This market is not merely commerce. It's the kingdom's bloodstream. It carries the outside in, filters it, and sends it onward, toward the Palisades, toward the court, toward the bronze mirrors that hold and throw light like controlled sun. You take a slow breath, tasting salt and smoke, and you keep walking, because the day in Yamatai is always moving, even when it pretends to be still. You drift away from the densest part of the market like a leaf carried by a slow current. No abrupt exit, just a gradual thinning of noise and bodies until you're back in lanes where the air smells more like wood and grain than salt and trade. Your senses feel slightly overloaded in the quietest possible way. Too many textures, too many careful arrangements, too much meaning packed into small motions. It's the kind of overload that makes you sleepy rather than stressed, which is, frankly, rude of the kingdom, because you came here to observe, not to be gently sedated. Relieved face. An attendant meets you at a turning and guides you inward again. Not to the deepest court, still not that, but toward a space that sits between public life and sacred life, the preparations for a feast. You can tell before you see it, because the air changes. It becomes warmer, carrying a layered scent of steamed grain, broth, and something grilled lightly over coals. Smoke here isn't used to hide borders. It's used to promise comfort. The preparation area is organized like everything else in Yamatai: stations, tools, rhythms. Low tables hold baskets of washed greens. Clay pots sit near embers, their lids tilted to release gentle steam. Wooden paddles rest beside bowls of rice, their handles worn smooth by hands that have repeated the same motion until it became muscle memory. No frantic kitchen chaos, no shouting. Just coordinated calm. You're placed at the edge, close enough to witness, far enough not to shed outsider clumsiness into the food. Someone offers you a small task, not with words but with an object placed in your hands, a bundle of herbs, tied in fiber. The message is clear: contribute lightly, don't invent a new system. You move slowly, copying the nearest person's pace. Leaves are sorted by texture and scent. Tough stems go one way, soft parts another. A bowl is rinsed, then rinsed again. Water is used carefully, always clean, always controlled, because damp is both friend and enemy here. The marsh feeds the rice, but moisture spoils stored food and invites sickness. Yamatai doesn't romanticize water, it manages it. A pot near the embers sends up a soft, steady bubbling sound. You lean slightly, careful now, always careful, and catch a glimpse of broth, pale, fragrant, dotted with herbs and perhaps dried fish. The smell wraps around your face and makes your stomach remember it's a body with needs. You hadn't realized how the day's calm has kept hunger at bay, like a lullaby distracting a child. Now the food calls you back into yourself. Across the space, rice is being steamed. Not just for ordinary meals, but for presentation. The grains are fluffed with practiced gentleness, then shaped into mounds that hold their form. You recognize the same discipline you saw in the market, arrangement as message. A feast in Yamatai isn't merely eating. It's an event that quietly says, the center holds, the season provided, the community is aligned. Lanterns are prepared nearby, simple frames with pale coverings, not yet lit. Even unlit, they change the atmosphere, making the space feel like evening is already being invited in. The attendants move around them with tidy care, checking wicks, adjusting placements. It's like setting the room for a guest who will arrive without needing to announce herself. You notice lacquered trays being brought out, dry, deep shining, flawless enough to make you keep your hands behind your back automatically. They catch the warm light from coals and reflect it back in a soft glow. Food will sit on those trays the way offerings sit on low tables, not to impress, but to focus attention. A small cluster of people begins arranging the seating area. Mats are placed with careful spacing. A central area remains open, implying that something or someone will occupy it. You can feel the gravitational pull of that absence. This is a feast, yes, but it's also choreography. Your small herb bundle is taken from you and added to a larger mix. Nothing you do stands out. That's the point. You've been absorbed into the preparation without becoming a disruption. You feel a quiet satisfaction at being useful without being noticeable. An unfamiliar pleasure, honestly. Then you sense the tension shift, the way you sensed it when a mirror appeared in the ritual courtyard. It's subtle, a pause in hands, a brief stillness in shoulders. Someone has realized something is missing. At first, you think it's just one of the feast items, a bowl, a cloth, a lantern. But the attendants' expressions tighten in a way that doesn't match a missing spoon. Their calm remains, but it becomes sharper, more contained. Like a drumbeat spacing itself for a different kind of rhythm. A lacquered tray is lifted, checked beneath, set down again. A basket is moved aside. A folded cloth is unfolded and refolded. The careful order of the space makes the absence louder, because in a messy place, missing things can hide. Here, the gap is obvious, like a missing note in a simple melody. Your eyes follow theirs, and you catch the glimpse that confirms it. A stand near the edge, prepared for an important object, sits empty. Bronze is supposed to be there. Not just any bronze, one of the mirrors. The kind that turns light into proof. The kind that signals legitimacy and alignment. The kind that can't casually wander off unless someone wants a problem. The attendants don't panic. Yamatai doesn't do panic. But you feel the atmosphere tighten, the way fog tightens along a border when fires are fed with damp wood. The feast preparation continues, outwardly steady, because the court cannot be seen flinching. Yet under that steady rhythm, a second rhythm begins, quiet searching. You are gently repositioned, guided away from the central workstations toward a lane that leads out. No one says, "Help." No one says, "Don't mention this." The instruction is conveyed the Yamatai way. Through movement and placement, you are being included in the solution, and you are expected to carry the same restraint you've been learning all day. You take a slow breath. You remember the marsh paths that swallowed your foot. You remember the mirror room where light bloomed and vanished with a turn. And you realize with sleepy dread that you are about to go looking for a missing omen in a kingdom built on fog. You move the way you've been trained to move all day, slow, contained, pretending you are simply being escorted for a perfectly normal reason that absolutely does not involve a missing bronze mirror and the fragile mood of a shaman-queen's court. Your body wants to speed up. Your pride wants to take charge. Yamatai, with its fog and fences and quiet rules, has other plans. It insists you solve problems the same way it lives, discreetly, patiently, and with your hands kept politely to yourself. The lane you're guided into is narrower than the market paths, quieter than the craft yards, and strangely clean for a place that sits on wet ground. Swept earth. Posts. Screens that bend the line of sight. You realize the search has already begun before you even fully understand your role in it. People are shifting baskets, checking stands, lifting folded cloths. Everything done with the careful neutrality of servants rearranging a room rather than investigators chasing a threat. No one wants panic to leak into the air. Panic would spread faster than fog. You pass a storage shed first. Low, dry, raised slightly on posts, like a granary's smaller cousin. The entrance is shaded. Inside, the smell changes. Dry straw, smoked wood, a faint metallic note that makes your attention sharpen. Bundles are stacked in neat rows. Wrapped trays. Folded mats. Coiled cord. Everything looks as if it belongs. That's the problem. A missing mirror can hide in belonging if someone wants it to. An attendant lifts a cloth bundle, cradling it as if it contains something alive. The bundle is unwrapped carefully, then rewrapped just as carefully. Not the mirror. Another bundle, then another. Your eyes follow the hands, watching for the warm bronze wink you now know too well. Nothing. The air in the shed feels tighter, not because anyone is dramatic, but because absence becomes heavier each time it persists. You're guided to the side, shown a small stack of folded fabric and a lacquered tray. The tray is flawless, deep shining, and you hold your hands behind your back like a child near wet paint, because you still remember the almost disaster of the craft yard, when your enthusiasm nearly made you the kingdom's newest cautionary tale. The attendants shift the tray, check beneath, check the fabric stacked beneath it. Still nothing. The missing mirror remains missing with insulting confidence. You move on. The search spreads in quiet concentric circles, like ripples in marsh water. The lane opens into a small courtyard where lantern frames wait unlit, their pale coverings catching the foggy twilight. Someone checks the lantern bases. Someone checks the poles where cords are hung. You think of the mirror's central knobs, meant for cords, meant for carrying, and your mind starts building unpleasant possibilities, moved intentionally, carried away, hidden in plain sight. The market comes back to you in flashes. Salt handled like power, iron displayed like a promise, beads traveling like proof that outsiders exist. If a mirror has vanished, you can't ignore that market day brought unfamiliar hands close to the kingdom's bloodstream. You also can't accuse anyone, because Yamatai isn't a place where accusations are thrown around like stones. Everything is filtered. Everything is layered. Even suspicion gets wrapped in cloth before it's carried. Your escort leads you through another screen and into a corridor-like passage between fences, one of those clever bends designed to keep sightlines broken. It's dusk now. Fog deepens. The world becomes softer, and that softness suddenly feels less like comfort and more like cover. A watch platform is visible through the haze, with a figure standing still as a post. The figure's presence doesn't feel threatening. It feels like the kingdom quietly putting its hands on the table. A reminder, the center is calm, but it is not careless. You're guided toward a second building, more controlled than the storage shed, less sacred than the mirror room, a kind of intermediate space where important items pass through before they're displayed. Inside, cloth-wrapped shapes sit on racks. A stone dish holds polishing powder. Several folded cloths are stacked with obsessive neatness. This is the kind of room where you would expect a mirror to be prepared for ceremony, then carried to the feast site. It's also the kind of room where a mirror could vanish without leaving obvious chaos, because everything is already wrapped, already similar, already designed to hide shine until the proper moment. A cloth bundle is lifted, unwrapped in slow layers. You feel your breath pause. The shape inside is round, but it's not bronze. It's wood, an empty frame, a stand piece, something meant to support something more important. The disappointment is quiet, but it hits hard. The attendants rewrap it anyway. Restoring order like order itself is a spell that keeps worse things away. You are guided back outside, where the fog has thickened enough to blur the edges of buildings. Lanterns begin to glow in the distance, not in bursts, but in careful increments, as if the settlement is turning on its evening one soft breath at a time. Somewhere behind screens, the feast preparations continue. Of course they do. The court cannot pause for a missing symbol. It must look stable even when its stomach is nodding. You find yourself walking toward the water side, toward the lanes that slope gently down toward reeds and landing boards. Not all the way out into the marsh, yet, but close enough that the air smells wetter. A few locals from the border circuit appear again, as if the search has naturally recruited the people who understand fog best. Their eyes skim the ground and the reed edges with the same steady competence that saved you from sinking earlier. You hate how reassuring that feels. A small scatter of footprints crosses the packed earth near a post. The prints are not dramatic, just impressions in damp soil, but the locals pause. One points with the tip of a pole. You lean slightly, careful not to step on anything, and see what they see, a dragged mark, faint, as if something heavy and round was shifted while wrapped in cloth. Not carried cleanly. Moved with haste, then corrected, then moved again. Your pulse tries to speed up. You force it down. A missing mirror is not found by sprinting. It's found by noticing the small, humiliating details people leave behind when they think fog will forgive them. The drag mark leads toward reeds, not deep into them, but toward a narrow gap where the ground turns wetter. Toward a place where boards begin, where boats might wait, where outsiders might have been guided, where locals might slip out unseen. The gap looks like any other gap. That's the danger of this kingdom. Everything can look ordinary when you don't know the language. The attendants don't let you step forward yet. They pause at the edge, holding you in that exact Yamatai rhythm. Stop, breathe, assess. The lantern glow behind you feels warmer now. The fog ahead feels thicker. Somewhere deeper, water moves with a soft sound that makes your skin remember sinking. You stand at the threshold, hands clean, shoes damp, mind quieter than it has any right to be, and you understand what the missing mirror has done. It has pulled you toward the border again, toward the place where Yamatai hides its secrets best. You stand at the reed gap just long enough for your heartbeat to remember the drum rhythm, slow, spaced, patient, because rushing is how the marsh wins. Lantern glow stays behind you like a warm room you're leaving on purpose, and the fog ahead feels like a door that refuses to open all the way. The border locals take the lead. They test the first plank with the tip of a pole and step forward as if the wetland is a familiar hallway. An attendant stays close to keep you from doing anything loudly stupid, like inventing a shortcut through reeds that all look identical. Your shoe, still faintly heavy from earlier mud, seems to approve. You step onto the board. It flexes, then holds. Damp slicks the wood. Fog beads on it like sweat. You place your feet where they place theirs, heel to toe, letting your body become a quiet copy. Within a few steps the lanterns behind you blur into pale smudges. Yamatai's swept courtyards vanish as if they were never real. Here, the air tastes colder. The mud scent isn't patty-friendly. It's older and sour, like a place that keeps secrets by breaking them down slowly. Reeds rise higher than your head, their tips dissolving into whiteness. When they sway, they brush together with a soft hiss, as if the marsh is turning pages in a book you're not allowed to read. The locals leave a language for themselves, knots, bends, tiny strips of bark, enough to guide them and confuse everyone else. You watch, trying to look competent while privately accepting that, left alone, you'd walk in a gentle circle until morning and call it a spiritual experience, face without mouth. The boards end. Of course they do. The marsh offers comfort in fragments, enough safety to lure you onward, then a gap that demands attention. Half-submerged logs form the crossing. A local steps onto the first and barely sinks it, knees soft, balance effortless. You go third, because you are not a hero, you are a guest who would like to stay upright. The log is cold through your soul. It shifts a fraction, and your stomach tightens, remembering the earlier mud suction embarrassment. You keep your center low. One step, then another, breath slow, eyes fixed on the next dark oval of wood. A faint amber light appears ahead, low over the water, as if someone has set a lantern on the marsh itself. It wavers, then steadies. Your mind tries to make it meaningful. The locals treat it like a hazard. One pauses and listens. A bird calls once from the left, short, sharp, then another answers farther away. The lead local angles the pole, and your group drifts away from the glow. You understand the trick. Light draws eyes. Eyes draw feet. Feet sink. Whether the marsh created this lure, or a human did, the effect is the same. It invites you to step where you shouldn't. The glow lingers at the edge of your vision like a stubborn thought you don't have the energy to argue with. The reeds thin into a wider pool. Mist schemes its surface in layered sheets. The amber glow reflects, doubling itself, making the water look like it's quietly watching you. Your shoulders tense, and you force them down again. A missing mirror doesn't get found by turning yourself into a shaking lantern. The path bends into thicker reeds, and the ground turns spongy. You step onto what looks like solid peat and feel it compress, slow, polite, persuasive. Your ankle dips, cold water seeps up. Instead of grabbing you, a pole slides in front of your shin, steady as a railing. You shift your weight onto it, then onto a firmer patch you would never have noticed. You free your foot slowly, rolling the sole out. The peat releases you with quiet disappointment, and your shoe makes that soft suction sound the marsh seems annoyingly proud of. Ahead, the reeds part around a low mound, an island of firmer earth, barely raised, just enough to hold a few posts and a crude shelter with a woven reed roof. It isn't a home. It's a staging point. The air under it smells faintly of damp smoke and metal. Not strong, but present, like a coin warmed in a palm. The locals approach without stepping straight in. They arc around, reading the ground by disturbance. You start seeing what they see: broken reed tips, a pressed line where something heavy was set down, then lifted. A clean fiber snagged on a splintered post, court cloth, not marsh cloth. The trace feels intimate, like finding a pin on a swept floor. Down by the shelter's edge, something pale dusts the dark wood. Polishing powder, a small smear, careless in the way only careful people can be careless. Someone prepared bronze here. Someone cared about shine, even inside fog. Someone handled a mirror and didn't realize their habits would betray them. And then, half hidden beneath a loose reed mat, you catch the faintest warm glint, bronze refusing to be entirely obedient to darkness. You don't reach for it. Of course you don't. Yamatai has trained that impulse out of you. You hold still, letting the fog settle, letting the locals move first, letting the marsh keep its breath for one more moment, while the missing omen waits, just close enough to make your skin prickle. You stay still on purpose, because this kingdom has taught you that stillness is not inactivity, it's control. The bronze glint under the reed mat is small, almost shy, but it pulls at your attention like a warm thread. The locals don't lunge. They circle. They test the ground. They watch for the marsh's little betrayals, the way reeds lean after a step, the way water trembles when weight shifts. One of them kneels at the mat's edge and lifts it the way you'd lift a sleeping child's blanket, slow, careful, unwilling to startle whatever might be beneath. The bronze mirror lies there wrapped in cloth, damp at the corners, but intact. Your chest loosens so fast it almost feels embarrassing. Then you notice what else is here. The mirror isn't simply lost. It's been handled. Polishing powder is smeared faintly on the cloth. A cloth corner is folded back as if someone checked the surface, then wrapped it again in haste. Near the shelter post, a thin fiber cord lies snapped. Clean break, tension release. Someone carried the mirror, then something went wrong. A slip, a snag, a decision to hide it quickly rather than risk being seen. Your mind offers a simple story, theft. Your body, already trained by Yamatai to distrust simple stories, offers another. Someone tried to move the mirror discreetly for a reason that felt urgent, then lost control of the situation. Either way, the solution now is the same. Return the mirror without letting this incident spread like smoke. The locals lift the bundle with both hands. Even wrapped, it has weight that changes the room. The attendant at your side makes a small motion. You help, but lightly. You slide your hands beneath the cloth edge, not touching bronze, only supporting the bundle's underside so it doesn't dip into damp. Your palms feel the mirror's shape through fabric, round, firm, cool with the stubborn chill of metal that has spent too long near water. Together you move it to a drier plank in the shelter and set it down. No one exhales dramatically. Relief here is controlled. It must be. Relief can make you sloppy, and sloppy is how the marsh takes what it wants. Now comes the delicate part, restoring readiness. The mirror can't return smeared, dulled, or damp. In Yamatai, surface is message. If the mirror appears cloudy at the feast, the court will read it as omen, not accident. You picture the mirror room. Cloth buffers, polishing powder, careful tilts of light, and you understand you're about to do a quiet version of that care in the least ideal environment possible. A foggy shelter in the marsh, with damp creeping into everything like gossip. A local produces a small bundle of cloth from a water-resistant pouch, prepared for border work, the same way they prepare reed markers and smoke fires. The attendant produces a pinch of powder, carried in a tiny lidded dish, because the court never travels without its tools. Even crises are organized. They unwrap the mirror slightly, just enough to expose the bronze face, shielding it from direct fog by angling their bodies like screens. The surface is dim, lightly filmed, with tiny streaks where moisture met polish. It's not ruined. It's merely compromised. In a normal life, you'd shrug. In Yamatai, compromise is a public language. You watch the technique rather than inventing your own. Powder is touched to cloth, barely any. The cloth moves in slow circles, pressure even, strokes consistent. No frantic rubbing, no aggressive fixing. The mirror is treated like something that wants to be coaxed back into clarity, not bullied. You're invited to hold the cloth edge taut so the polisher's circles don't snag. This is your contribution, steadiness, not heroics. The bronze warms slightly under friction. The faint smear fades. The surface begins to catch whatever light the fog allows, muted, amber, alive. A local tilts the mirror a fraction to test it, and a pale streak of sky slides across the face. No harsh glare, no distortion worse than the natural waviness of ancient bronze. The mirror is returning to itself. But the damp is persistent. The cloth corners still feel cool. The attendant makes a small motion, dry first, polish second, dry again. A clean cloth is brought out, softer, drier, and the mirror is padded, not wiped, to avoid dragging moisture into streaks. The steps are patient, layered, like lacquer, like water gates, like everything here. When the face is clear enough, they rewrap it with the original cloth, but not the damp parts. Those corners are folded away, replaced by a dry inner layer. The wrap is tighter now, more intentional, as if the mirror is being reintroduced to discipline. The snapped cord is replaced with a fresh one. A knot is tied in a way you recognize from the marsh markers, simple, strong, readable. Only then do they look at you. Not accusing, not praising. Just that steady Yamatai gaze that asks, "Can you keep this quiet?" You answer with posture. You lower your eyes. You keep your hands still. You let your breathing slow. The attendant nods once, barely. Now the journey back must be as careful as the cleaning. A mirror returned in haste would carry haste into the court. So you move the way you moved on the logs, center low, steps measured, attention wide. The locals lead. The mirror bundle is carried between two pairs of hands, level and stable, kept above splash height. You follow close, ready to support if the ground gives. Fog closes around you as you leave the shelter mound. The amber lure light in the distance has vanished, or perhaps you've stopped looking for it. Your mind is too focused on weight and balance, on keeping the bronze safe from damp and drama. When you reach the first half-submerged log crossing, you pause. The group repositions. One person crosses first, then another, then the mirror, then you. Everything is sequenced like a ritual. Your foot slips slightly on the second log and you freeze instantly. No flail, no panic, just a controlled pause while the pole steadies you. You regain footing, then move. The mirror never dips. That's the victory. The boards appear again like mercy, worn planks, familiar flecks, a clear line through reeds. Lantern glow returns ahead, blurred through fog, and with it the sense of the settlement's calm machines still running. The feast is still being prepared. The court still needs its symbol. And you are carrying the solution back like a secret that must arrive as if it was never missing at all. You re-enter the settlement as if you never left it, which is exactly the point. Lantern glow thickens into real light again, soft, warm pools on swept earth, while fog gathers at the edges like it's pretending it didn't just try to swallow you whole. The mirror bundle stays level between careful hands. Nobody makes a show of returning it. Yamatai does not celebrate solutions. It absorbs them, quietly, like water soaking into packed soil. The attendants lead you through the familiar bends between fences, those polite little turns that keep sight lines broken and emotions contained. Your footsteps sound too loud for half a second, then you adjust, shorter steps, softer landing, until you're moving like someone who belongs to quiet. You pass the basins where you were cleansed earlier, and the memory lands strangely now. Back then it was preparation for witnessing. Now it feels like preparation for not being blamed. You reach the feast preparation space, and everything looks exactly as it looked when the mirror went missing, because the court cannot afford to look shaken. Mats still sit in disciplined spacing. Trays still gleam with that deep lacquer shine that made you keep your hands behind your back like a reformed troublemaker. Food still steams gently. The air still smells of rice and broth and the soft promise of warmth. Only small details reveal what happened: a slightly tighter calm in the attendant's shoulders, a more exact placement of objects, a quiet increase in watching. Yamatai is steady, yes, but it is also alert now, like a marsh bird that looks relaxed until you step wrong. The mirror is taken from the bundle with the same practiced reverence you saw in the storage room, and for a breath you feel the tiniest fear. What if the polish isn't perfect? What if damp left a film? What if the bronze throws light wrong and the court reads it as omen? But the surface catches lantern glow cleanly, warm as held sunlight. A pale streak slides across it and fades. No clouding. No smear. The attendant's hands pause for a heartbeat, just long enough to confirm the kingdom won't have to explain itself. And then the mirror is wrapped again and placed where it was always supposed to be, as if it simply returned from a brief, unimportant errand. Your part in the rescue dissolves instantly into the general rhythm of service. You are guided aside, tucked again into the safe edge where you can witness without interfering. It's oddly soothing, being treated like a moving piece of furniture. You realize you're tired in a deep way, the kind that makes your bones feel warm and your thoughts feel slow, like rice steaming in a clay pot. Night folds over Yamatai without a dramatic sunset. Fog makes dusk feel eternal. Lanterns take over in soft increments. The feast moves through its choreography, food arranged, offerings placed, bowls lifted, trays carried with that steady, economical grace. You catch the scent of herbs you sorted earlier and feel a tiny, private satisfaction that you contributed to something without making it weird. And still, beneath all that calm, you can sense the kingdom holding its breath. Not fear exactly. Anticipation. The missing mirror has been returned, but symbols don't just snap back into place. The court needs to show, visibly, unmistakably, that the center is aligned again. The people need proof they can sleep. The proof arrives with dawn. You don't so much wake as drift upward from sleep, guided by small movements around you, soft steps, the hush of cloth, the faint clink of ceramic. The air is cooler, cleaner, as if night rinsed the smoke and left only the essentials. Fog still hangs, but it's thinner now, turning the world pale rather than hidden. You're led outward through lanes that feel familiar and new at the same time. The settlement is awake in a restrained way, no bustling, no loud calling, just a quiet convergence, bodies moving toward one direction with shared purpose. The path angles toward open ground where the fog lifts slightly, and you see the rice fields beyond, their flooded surfaces catching the earliest light like scattered bronze. A low drum begins somewhere ahead. One beat. Then another. Slow, spaced. Your ribs remember it instantly, like your body has been waiting all night to fall back into that rhythm. The beat steadies the crowd without needing to command it. People adjust their posture, their breathing, their spacing. You feel yourself doing the same, shoulders down, jaw unclenched, hands still. Then the procession begins, not with spectacle, but with precision. Attendants move first, creating a corridor through the fog with their bodies and their calm. Lanterns are carried low, their light paling in the growing dawn. Incense smoke rises in thin ribbons, less thick than yesterday's ritual courtyard, more like a gentle reminder than a trance. And somewhere in that controlled flow, the bronze mirror appears again, held level, face angled just enough to catch the new sun. The fog parts in slow sheets as light strengthens. A pale beam lands on bronze, and the mirror answers by sending it onward, onto the ground, onto a woven screen, across a row of bowed heads. The streak of light moves like a living thing, sliding without urgency, making the simplest statement possible. The center holds light. The center directs it. The center is not lost. And then, behind screens and attendants and the careful spacing of bodies, you feel her presence before you properly see her. The shaman-queen is not introduced. Yamatai doesn't announce power. It arranges the world so power becomes obvious. She moves with a stillness that travels. Her pace is measured, not slow, not fast, inevitable. Her clothing catches the dawn softly, fibers and layers shifting like fog itself. Her hair is controlled, her posture absolute. You don't see her face clearly at first, because the screens and angles don't quite allow it, and because part of her authority is in not being easily looked at. Yet you understand the effect immediately. The crowd's tension loosens, not into chaos, but into relief shaped like discipline. Shoulders drop. Breaths deepen. The air feels less sharp. You can almost hear everyone's nervous systems agreeing, finally, that it's safe to be human again. The mirror is lifted a fraction higher, and sunlight, now stronger, spills across it. For a heartbeat, it throws a clean, bright patch onto the damp ground, and the fog glows around it like a curtain lit from behind. The scene is quiet, almost tender, and it carries the weight of all the night's hidden worry, the snapped cord, the reed mat, the damp cloth corners, your near slip on the log crossing. All of it dissolves into this controlled beam of morning. You stand at the edge, feeling strangely moved by something so simple, light redirected, calm restored, a kingdom choosing steadiness over panic. The shaman-queen passes, and the space she leaves behind feels warmer, as if her presence persuaded the fog to thin and the day to behave. The drumbeat slows again, returning to wide spacing, like a lullaby for awake people. The procession continues toward the inner court, and the crowd remains behind, held in a calm that now feels earned rather than forced. You breathe in the cool dawn air, rice field wetness, faint incense, with smoke fading, and you realize Yamatai has done what it always does. It took a problem, wrapped it in restraint, and resolved it without letting the world see it bleed. The procession fades inward, swallowed by screens, and Palisade turns the way your worries get swallowed when you finally stop feeding them. People begin to drift back to ordinary tasks, calm restored not by speeches but by the quiet fact of the mirror catching dawn correctly. The marsh still exists. Fog still hangs in pale sheets. But the kingdom's mood has changed, softer at the edges, as if everyone has been given permission to exhale. You don't follow the shaman-queen deeper. Yamatai doesn't reward curiosity with access. It rewards it with lessons. Your place remains at the margin, where you can feel meaning without grabbing at it. An attendant guides you along a side path that slopes gently away from the densest fences, toward the lanes that lead outward, toward patties, toward reeds, toward the landing boards you first stepped onto like an uncertain thought. Morning grows brighter in slow increments. The fog thins, not completely, but enough that the world begins to show its textures again. Wet soil dark as tea, reed tips beaded with water, smoke threads rising from small hearths like quiet handwriting. The air smells clean in a way that makes your chest feel wider. Even your shoe, finally, feels like a normal shoe again, as if the marsh has forgiven you for not fully committing to being swallowed. You pass the rice fields once more. Sunlight lies across the flooded rectangles, turning them into calm mirrors of their own. You think of the bronze mirror's warm surface, how it held and redirected light. You realize the kingdom's symbolism isn't separate from its survival, it's an echo of it. Water reflects sky. Bronze reflects water. People reflect the court. Everything is reflection layered on reflection, each one slightly imperfect, each one carrying a message anyway. Near the granaries, a worker adjusts a tied band on a post. Simple maintenance, no ceremony. Yet you notice how their hands move, steady, precise, respectful. The same discipline you saw in the mirror room. The same patience you saw in lacquer strokes. The same calm you borrowed when you stopped your foot from sinking deeper into peat. Yamatai has one style, and it applies it everywhere, control through gentleness. You're guided past the craft yards again. Yarn hangs drying in soft colors, indigo, russet, smoky brown, like the sky learning to be fabric. A potter's kiln gives off a faint warmth. A lacquer tray catches sunlight and swallows it into a deep, quiet shine. You don't reach out. You don't even lean too close. You've learned, finally, that reverence can look like distance. At the market space, mats are being folded, bundles retied. Salt sacks are tightened. A trader checks a rope knot. The scene feels lighter now that the mirror crisis has been sealed back into invisibility. No one discusses it. No one needs to. Yamatai's solutions are meant to disappear, leaving only the impression of stability. The path toward the landing boards opens ahead, and you feel a strange reluctance. Not dramatic sadness, just a gentle heaviness, the kind you feel when you're about to leave a place that has quietly retrained your nervous system. You arrived with modern urgency humming under your skin. You're leaving with something slower in your bones, like the drumbeat has rewritten your pulse. At the water's edge, reed boats wait again, dark commas and pale air. The same locals from the border circuit are there, because of course they are. They seem to live at thresholds, fluent in both inside and outside. One of them checks the boards, taps a plank with a pole, then gestures for you to step where it's safest. You obey without thinking, and you realize that obedience, in this context, isn't weakness. It's respect for a place that doesn't care about your confidence. You sit low in the boat. The water holds you. The paddle dips. The marsh begins to glide past in soft, foggy layers. Reeds whisper against the hull. A bird lifts and disappears into whiteness. The channel curves, and the settlement behind you fades until it's only a suggestion. Palisades stakes becoming a dark blur, then nothing. For a moment you try to hold on to details, the way your mind always tries to hoard experience. The mirror's warm bloom of light, the incense's heavy sweetness, the snapped cord and polishing powder, the way the shaman-queen's presence turned a crowd's tension into relief. But fog does what fog does. It softens sharp memories. It makes things feel like dreams, even when they were solid. You realize this is part of Yamatai's protection, too. Not just reeds and water and fences, but the way the place slides out of your grip once you leave it. The kingdom does not want to be owned by your recollection. It wants to remain half legend, half landscape, a story that changes slightly each time it's told. The boat reaches the landing you first stepped onto. Your feet find boards again. You stand. The air feels different out here, less curated, more open, still wet, still fogged, but without the court's layered control. Your body notices the difference immediately, like stepping out of a carefully tuned room. You feel more exposed, and yet also freer. The kingdom behind you is steady, the world ahead is wide. You take a few careful steps onto marsh path, still a suggestion more than a line, and you pause. Not because anyone tells you to, but because you want to. You look back once, into the pale distance where Yamatai would be if the fog felt generous. You see nothing clear. Just reeds, water, and a faint dark hint that might be Palisades stakes, or might be your brain trying to keep the story alive. And that, you understand, is the farewell Yamatai offers, not a dramatic goodbye, not a final speech, but a soft disappearance that leaves you carrying the lesson yourself. You turn forward. You breathe in wet air. You walk on. The procession fades inward, swallowed by screens, and Palisade turns the way your worries get swallowed when you finally stop feeding them. People begin to drift back to ordinary tasks, calm restored not by speeches but by the quiet fact of the mirror catching dawn correctly. The marsh still exists. Fog still hangs in pale sheets. But the kingdom's mood has changed, softer at the edges, as if everyone has been given permission to exhale. You don't follow the shaman-queen deeper. Yamatai doesn't reward curiosity with access. It rewards it with lessons. Your place remains at the margin, where you can feel meaning without grabbing at it. An attendant guides you along a side path that slopes gently away from the densest fences, toward the lanes that lead outward, toward patties, toward reeds, toward the landing boards you first stepped onto like an uncertain thought. Morning grows brighter in slow increments. The fog thins, not completely, but enough that the world begins to show its textures again. Wet soil dark as tea, reed tips beaded with water, smoke threads rising from small hearths like quiet handwriting. The air smells clean in a way that makes your chest feel wider. Even your shoe, finally, feels like a normal shoe again, as if the marsh has forgiven you for not fully committing to being swallowed. You pass the rice fields once more. Sunlight lies across the flooded rectangles, turning them into calm mirrors of their own. You think of the bronze mirror's warm surface, how it held and redirected light. You realize the kingdom's symbolism isn't separate from its survival, it's an echo of it. Water reflects sky. Bronze reflects water. People reflect the court. Everything is reflection layered on reflection, each one slightly imperfect, each one carrying a message anyway. Near the granaries, a worker adjusts a tied band on a post. Simple maintenance, no ceremony. Yet you notice how their hands move, steady, precise, respectful. The same discipline you saw in the mirror room. The same patience you saw in lacquer strokes. The same calm you borrowed when you stopped your foot from sinking deeper into peat. Yamatai has one style, and it applies it everywhere, control through gentleness. You're guided past the craft yards again. Yarn hangs drying in soft colors, indigo, russet, smoky brown, like the sky learning to be fabric. A potter's kiln gives off a faint warmth. A lacquer tray catches sunlight and swallows it into a deep, quiet shine. You don't reach out. You don't even lean too close. You've learned, finally, that reverence can look like distance. At the market space, mats are being folded, bundles retied. Salt sacks are tightened. A trader checks a rope knot. The scene feels lighter now that the mirror crisis has been sealed back into invisibility. No one discusses it. No one needs to. Yamatai's solutions are meant to disappear, leaving only the impression of stability. The path toward the landing boards opens ahead, and you feel a strange reluctance. Not dramatic sadness, just a gentle heaviness, the kind you feel when you're about to leave a place that has quietly retrained your nervous system. You arrived with modern urgency humming under your skin. You're leaving with something slower in your bones, like the drumbeat has rewritten your pulse. At the water's edge, reed boats wait again, dark commas and pale air. The same locals from the border circuit are there, because of course they are. They seem to live at thresholds, fluent in both inside and outside. One of them checks the boards, taps a plank with a pole, then gestures for you to step where it's safest. You obey without thinking, and you realize that obedience, in this context, isn't weakness. It's respect for a place that doesn't care about your confidence. You sit low in the boat. The water holds you. The paddle dips. The marsh begins to glide past in soft, foggy layers. Reeds whisper against the hull. A bird lifts and disappears into whiteness. The channel curves, and the settlement behind you fades until it's only a suggestion. Palisades stakes becoming a dark blur, then nothing. For a moment you try to hold on to details, the way your mind always tries to hoard experience. The mirror's warm bloom of light, the incense's heavy sweetness, the snapped cord and polishing powder, the way the shaman-queen's presence turned the crowd's tension into relief. But fog does what fog does. It softens sharp memories. It makes things feel like dreams, even when they were solid. You realize this is part of Yamatai's protection, too. Not just reeds and water and fences, but the way the place slides out of your grip once you leave it. The kingdom does not want to be owned by your recollection. It wants to remain half legend, half landscape, a story that changes slightly each time it's told. The boat reaches the landing you first stepped onto. Your feet find boards again. You stand. The air feels different out here, less curated, more open, still wet, still fogged, but without the quartz layered control. Your body notices the difference immediately, like stepping out of a carefully tuned room. You feel more exposed, and yet also freer. The kingdom behind you is steady, the world ahead is wide. You take a few careful steps onto marsh path, still a suggestion more than a line, and you pause. Not because anyone tells you to, but because you want to. You look back once, into the pale distance where Yamatai would be if the fog felt generous. You see nothing clear. Just reeds, water, and a faint dark hint that might be Palisades stakes, or might be your brain trying to keep the story alive. And that, you understand, is the farewell Yamatai offers, not a dramatic goodbye, not a final speech, but a soft disappearance that leaves you carrying the lesson yourself. You turn forward. You breathe in wet air. You walk on. Your steps grow slower now, not from fatigue, but from a gentle willingness to let the world blur at the edges. The fog that once felt like a barrier becomes a blanket, and the marsh's whispering reeds turn into a steady, soothing hush, like the ocean heard from far away. You don't need to hold every detail tightly anymore. You can let the bronze light, and the incense smoke and the careful hands of Yamatai settle into you the way warmth settles into a room after a fire has been tended for a long time. In your mind, the mirror's surface softens into a warm, quiet glow, no longer an omen, no longer a problem to solve, just a circle of light that reminds you how calmly life can be guided when you stop fighting it. The drumbeat slows until it's almost indistinguishable from your own heartbeat, and your breath begins to feel like a tide, in and out, steady, patient, forgiving. Even the marsh, with its greedy mud and its hidden channels, feels less like a threat now and more like an old teacher who corrects without cruelty. You remember how you almost sank, how you steadied yourself, how you learned to move with the land instead of against it. That lesson follows you like a soft hand at your back, keeping you upright, keeping you calm, keeping you safe. The fog thickens again in your imagination, but this time it isn't hiding anything you need to chase. It's simply closing the day, folding Yamatai back into legend, tucking the shaman-queen's court behind screens of reed and pale air. You don't strain to see through it. You let it be. You let yourself be. And as your eyelids grow heavier, you can picture that last, gentle beam of morning light sliding across bronze, then fading, not abruptly, not dramatically, just softly, as if the world is lowering its voice so you can rest. Your shoulders loosen. Your jaw unclenches. The day's weight slips off you in slow layers. Sleep comes the way the marsh fog comes, quietly, patiently, inevitable. End of story. Sweet dreams.